Welcome back, everyone. It is Wins Above Fantasy, episode 181. If you're joining on the podcast, happy Thursday. For those of you on the live stream, welcome as always. Steve, here we are, middle of June. I know last show we talked about some barrel rate risers and fallers in the month of May. Now that we're mid-June, we kind of cheated a little bit and did April versus May and June, where we're flipping to pitchers and looking at K minus BB, which I know that's your desert island pitching stat, and it is a great one. But we're talking risers and fallers. First segment, we're going to be hitting on some guys who are a little bit, I won't say newer to the scene, but not fixtures in terms of fantasy value adds, if you will. And then we'll get into some guys who are a little bit higher rostered, but have really kind of turned it on midway through. And also some fallers as well. So going to be a great show. This is always the time of year where you're looking for pitching, and it seems like extra with all these injuries that have been happening. But yeah, luckily I've dodged the bug personally, Steve, and I'm seven wins on the bounce in my home league after being rooted to last place. I've surged up to third place, Steve. So fantasy vibes are high over here, but can't wait to get back into it, man. How you doing?
Good. I haven't had the injury bug, knock on wood, at least too bad with pitching, but there's definitely been some regression. I felt the Luzardo 20 runs in 2 games in my bones. That was a tough one, but he bounced back today. Looked great. It looked like it was a tipping issue, right? He fixed his mechanics in the stretch, got a bigger glove, and what do you know, had 10 Ks and no walks again. So pitching is a fickle thing. That's why we could see these sort of changes and need to examine them month to month and look at what's going on. And it's easy. Like, we have this sort of spiel each year, right? Like, the first few weeks of the season, like, it's easy to tell who the pickup is because that's their line, right? You may not necessarily know because their season line may not be great, especially in some of these guys that have improved. You may not want to jump because they have a ERA that starts at 5, but there's been some good things that go on underneath the surface that may have you more interested than you think you should be. So, yeah, it's my favorite, pick one pitching metric. This is the one, K minus BB. And we got, it's March, April, there's a start or two in March or April that we did. And just to get into the meat and potatoes of the show, what I ran was strikeout minus walk rate for starters with a minimum of 20 innings in March and April, and then strikeout minus walk rate leaderboard for May and June with starters with a minimum of 30 innings. So guys that actually had a decent sample in each month. You want to say, 3 or 4 starts in April, 5 or 6 starts in June. So you're comparing a guys who have a decent sample in both periods, and then we can examine the change, and then just did a delta between the two to find who rose the most and who fell the most. I know we'll focus a little bit more on the risers as I think we should. That's what we want to be actionable and give some advice that players may not be rostered as much, at least in your 12-team league. So this is one of my favorite metrics, and I think something that works in a sample like this too, right? Like, Stuff Plus is great, like from a start to start basis, and really over the first few innings. Not that it's not good to look at, but you could really tell how a pitcher is doing by looking at just their strikeout and walk rate over a sample of 5 or 6 starts. So that's what we're doing here, and excited to get into it.
Yeah, it's a fun exercise because you kind of start. It is a result-based stat in a way, but not directly on.
Yeah, not like ERA, right? Like, it's
exactly.
a result-based stat that's predictive, right? Like, any Joe Schmo could, have 10 hard hit balls that go right to guys and have 1 strikeout, 1 walk, and go 6 innings, 1 run, right?
Right.
But you're almost more impressed with a guy that strikes out 8, doesn't walk any, and maybe gives up an untimely home run after a bloop single or something like that.
Yep. And for me, I kind of went from the Stav sheet and then just kind of backed into month-over-month changes, tried to scour to see if there was a Lance Brozdowski Substack, or the game logs on Pitcher List are great for something like this, where Nick does the write-up on each one of them and kind of, charts what he's looking for on a start-to-start basis and assesses them. So, yeah, it's great. And like you said, Steve, it can produce some interesting things when you look at the back of the baseball card, which brings us to subject number one, which is Bryce Elder, who you see the 4.08 ERA, the 117 WHIP, and maybe that could be a little bit sleepy, but for the fact that he probably had the loudest, most surprising start of the fantasy baseball year with 12 strikeouts in 8 innings last week against the Giants. And yeah, I don't know, Steve. I mean, if you asked me what Braves pitcher would be a riser, Bryce Elder would be pretty far on the list. And I know we'll talk about another one, but compared to the Smith Shavers, and just he's a name that was mediocre, kind of a value add a couple years ago in like 23, but in a really boring way. And then he just rattles off 12 Ks, and you have to kind of assess on the K minus BB chart. He ramped up from a 5% clip in March, April on K minus BB up to 23%, which of course was buoyed by that Giants start. But as I was digging in a little bit more, I don't want to overstate the excitement, because I think most people are kind of, expecting that to be an anomaly. But the slider velocity has gone up a tick from April to where we are in June, and that's been kind of progressive. And the whiff rate on the slider has gone up from 23% in April up to 34%, which is just above league average. The 23% is bad, but he's throwing it a lot more to lefties. So, I mean, there is kind of a notable approach change when it comes to that. I mean, if you look at the splits month over month, it's an intentional change. So calls us to look at Bryce Elder, 18% rostered in Yahoo. And as I've noted here for each of these guys, he's 83rd on the list. So Nick is kind of saying, I'm not really buying it, but he's got Rocky Road next on Friday. So do you think we'll see kind of a sustained, usable rotation piece here in Bryce Elder, or do you think this is totally like flash in the pan type of thing?
And that write-up was after that start, right? Like that update to the list was Monday. That start was what, Sunday? I think it was for Elder. Yeah,
over the
I think Elder sort of benefited from, or his rostership and owners benefited from it being a Sunday and head-to-head leagues. You kind of just streamed Elder with the hoping that that something good happened. And you got into something where you can't drop him, and
my home league villain benched him to protect ratios and was like, "You
so he was
gotta be kidding
before
me!
Then.
I would have flipped strikeouts." So I love that.
Interesting. Who was that against on Sunday? Was it Reds?
I think it was the Giants. Yep,
Giants. Okay, so
in San Francisco.
And Giants have been running pretty hot. It is a great pitching environment, right? But I think the Giants had won like 6 in a row before that, or something like that. Or they actually won the game, right? The Giants, is that true?
I had it up just now. Yes, they did.
Yeah,
the
they
Giants
did.
won
So they didn't even get you a win.
All for naught.
8 innings, 12 Ks, 1 run, not even a win. We could talk about that stat later on, or rant about that in its own way. But yeah, I mean, there's a few changes going on with Elder. There's basically from May, his first May start, the fastball usage has totally dropped. In that last start, he barely threw any. I think he threw 6 fastballs, forcing fastballs in that start. With that, the sinker usage has gone up. The changeup usage has gone up. So by Stuff Plus, the sinker is a better pitch. It's still not great. It's just a 93. It was a 93. You could do the Stuff Plus game logs over on Fangraphs, which is nice. And the slider and changeup are decent. It's average stuff. And what you could see, what pops in the game logs, is that the location in those starts that he's been really good. The start versus Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh on May 9th. He had eight strikeouts, no walks. It was a great location plus score. The one versus the Giants, also a great location plus score, like 124. And there's not a lot of delta or difference in those location plus scores. Like with stuff plus, like pitches pop, and you see 110s, 115s, 120s, sometimes even higher. Location, it's usually closer to that 100 number. So to see a number that good, that means that he was just dotting. That makes me a little bit more hesitant to buy because of things that Nick Pollock likes to talk about all the time. Start to start, location is going to be finicky. That being said, I think there's more here to Elder than we've seen basically probably since 2023 when he was a useful fantasy pitcher. Like I could see a high threes 1.25 whip with 7 to 8 strikeouts per 9. Which is basically what he was in 2023. And he was pretty good. Yeah, a lot of that fantasy value probably came from the 12 wins that he got then. That was, Atlanta at their peak powers. Maybe that might not be the case this year, but I definitely think there's a lot better pitcher than what we saw in 2024. I would bet he's closer to that 2023 season where he's a back end usable starter. Maybe not start him every single start, but absolutely starting versus Colorado. Maybe not start him versus the Mets the next game, but still worth rostering, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And the location is great. Also, the command is above average, just like or I guess control, just a sub 7% walk rate. And the ground ball rate is 87th percentile as well. So I think you kind of have
package could work. That package could work.
Exactly. It is that kind of Kyle Hendricks type of thing that there's not a lot of stuff and strikeouts to fall back on. If it does start falling apart, I wouldn't have heartburn with kind of dropping and moving on, but I do think you ride the wave. And I think at 18%, I do think he's under rostered. Like, well, as we look, that's in Yahoo, but as we look at some other names throughout this, like, I think I'd rather take a stab on him than a guy we'll talk about later.
I think the first three we're talking about is a nice would you rather. I know their roster percentage is a little different, but
they vary quite a bit. Yeah, but there's one on the fallers that we'll do a recall. So that's a tease that I think I'd rather roll the dice with Elder than go with this guy who's like in the mid 60% rostered. But that's Bryce Elder. Yep, Rocky Road and then Mets. So yeah, keep an eye on Friday with that, what he does in that start. But if the K's are there, I think that's something to watch because if he's figuring out how to use those breakers, that the control stuff, I would hope is pretty consistent because he's always had good control. Is that right? Like when we look at 2023 year, I guess it was a little bit. That was 8.6%, 7.5%
average.
So it's average. Yeah, not terrible. But so there's Elder, 18% rostered, 78% rostered is Mathew Boyd, and he has just been probably 5 or 6 years we've been talking about Mathew Boyd, just wondering if it's real. Like that feels like the byline on his entire fantasy career is like, is it finally happening? I feel like it was even like an Alex Fast name when I first started listening.
The Boyd boys,
yeah, right. And so yeah, Mathew Boyd is definitely a big riser here. His K-minus BB in March, April was 12%, which in and of itself is like passable, but up to 21% in May and June. And a lot of that was around the control where the walk rate dropped from 9% in April down to under 2% in May. Now that's come up a little bit in June. But yeah, Mathew Boyd for the Cubs, 6 quality starts in his last 7 outings. His season line looks great. He's got a 2.89 ERA. The whip is a little bit higher, around a strikeout per inning. Steve, what are you seeing with Mathew Boyd here? What are your thoughts? I personally have no shares, but I'm starting to feel a little bit of FOMO on that.
I think I feel the same way. Over these last few years, it's kind of been the story of, he's been a good pitcher by stuff, results, underlying numbers. He just has not been able to stay healthy. He's at 74 innings. That's the most he's had since 2021 when he had 78 innings.
Wow.
He hasn't gone past 78 innings since 2019 when he had that 185 and a 30% strikeout rate. And a 6% walk rate, and honestly, like a pretty unlucky 4, 5, 6 ERA. But that was like, when he was a preseason sleeper. I think I remember rostering him on opening day. He struck out like 12 Yankees or 13 Yankees in Yankee Stadium. And like is like, look at this ace that you found in the last round. It didn't necessarily last that long, but it's kind of been just a story of getting hurt and trying to come back and knowing that the stuff and underlying numbers are pretty good. He's just been unreliable as far as like, posting 20 to 30 times a year. It looks like maybe he could do that. That being said, with probably the worst underlying numbers that he's had since since that time. The 22% strikeout rate is the worst since 2021 when he had 19% strikeout rate, but the walk rate is the best of his career. And honestly, like, I'll take that change. The velocity is actually up. It's the best velocity of his career. The swing strike rate is a little bit down, but I mean, again, if this is the Mathew Boyd that's going to make a start every 5 to 6 days, you'll take that. Interesting in the pitch mix, the changeup usage has gone up a little bit, and that's been a good weapon to righties. He throws a lot to righties, which obviously, as a left-handed pitcher, to have a weapon against offhanded pitchers, offhanded hitters, it's important. And it looks like he's locating it well, like it's spotted down in the zone, towards the corner, away from righties, which is where you want to see a changeup spotted. So, yeah, maybe it's not deserved of a 2.89 ERA. I'm probably buying the ERA indicators the rest of the way. A 3.45 xERA, a 3.74 WHIP, but you'll absolutely take that for Mathew Boyd, and it seems pretty legit. Like, obviously the 12 K minus BB in April and March isn't great, but like it's close to average, right? If that's one of his worst months there, and then there's months where he's going to post 20 K minus BB, you'll take that, and that'll be a pitcher that you want to roster for most of the season. And I know his roster rate, he's rostered in every single 15 team, 14 team league, and even most 12 teams. But yeah, I don't see much that would say, I see less concern with Boyd than even with Elder, because I know that there'll be more strikeouts there. And it just seems like when Boyd is healthy, he has good results. Yeah. When Elder's healthy, there's a lot more blow-up potential.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think to go with the velo uptick on the fastball, it's interesting that he's throwing it as much as he has since 2020, really. And he's getting some really good movement on that this year compared to past years as well. So maybe that's contributing. And obviously the Cubs are a good kind of win context as well there. So that's Boyd. The third one, talking about another Brave, is Grant Holmes. And Holmes was kind of that preseason sleeper and now rostered at 42%. I think that was a lot higher in April. But in April, the K minus BB was 8%, and now it's up to 19%. And I think this is one, Steve, to your point, that like, it sneaks up on you a little bit when somebody's starting to put some good starts together, and even his ratios haven't quite been there, but the strikeout and the swing and miss stuff has looked good. So now Holmes' season line is a 4.07 ERA and a 1.22 WHIP. But what he's been doing has been really interesting, in my opinion, with the slider usage, where that was at 28% in April, and that's moved up gradually up to what's now 40% in June. And the whiff rate on that has gone from 33%, which again is around like league average for a slider in April, up to 40% in May, and up to 48% in June. So small sample, but definitely seeing a trend of throwing a strong pitch more, which is the most basic way of kind of unlocking potential. And this was one that Lance Brozdowski wrote up in May about how he was kind of perplexed why Grant Holmes was going to his fastball against righties when he would have like a 2-strike count. and Holmes stopped doing that and started going to the slider, and it's kind of unlocked a lot of the strikeout stuff. Now, even his last couple starts where there's been, 9 strikeouts in 2 of his last 3 starts, the ratios still haven't looked great. So if Holmes is available in your league, I would say he's a priority add, just because it's hard to find those guys who can pop off for strikeouts. And it looks like some of the other stuff, he's just kind of, coming into rhythm in a way. So I'm interested in Holmes. I think there's still some question marks around like the control and everything, but good team context. I think he would be above Elder on my pecking order. And right now he's 67 on the list for Mr. Nick Pollock. But curious where you're at on Grant Holmes, Steve. We haven't talked about him much since preseason, but what are you thinking on this kind of mini breakout, or at least righting the ship?
The slider for me is key. That was his best pitch last year. Like, I know it didn't grade out like with gaudy stuff plus numbers, but it got really good results. By run value last year, that slider was, it was just even. But this year is at 6, and the fastball is at -12. So like, I know there's some downside to looking at the result base metrics, and it's not looking at actually how the pitch should perform. It's only looking at what it did so far. So, but the results speak for himself. It's as bad as you can get for run value with the fastball, and then close to as good as you can get with the slider. So the fact that he's throwing that more to righties, using it more, it was the pitch that he was successful with last year. That has me encouraged. I think Holmes could be an absolute fine back end fantasy starter. So I would not be surprised if going forward, his K-BB was closer to what it was in May and June rather than what it was in April.
Yep. Yeah, I think some of the whip is a concern, just because the walk percentage in April and June has been around like 13%. In May, it was better at 7%, but that's the
last year was
volatility.
5.3%. Maybe that's a bit of an outlier. He did have some high walk numbers in the minors, and maybe that was sort
The
of
whip.
a 1-year type of blip of being able to keep guys off the base paths that way, because when you do have a fastball that's that bad, if you walk guys, that's gonna make your problems a lot worse.
Yeah, even so, I think just with it being, other than Mizorowski getting the call up, it's been kind of hard to find pitchers to get excited about in the past like week or two. So I think Grant Holmes I guess he's 42% rostered. That's one I still think is good. His next one is against the Mets. So that will be an interesting test, the way they've been. But I still think Holmes is a good one to monitor. And that 42 for him and the 18% for Elder seems a little low given just the state of pitching. So we are talking about some guys who are rostered a bit higher, some more staples who have turned it around a bit. But we're going to get to them right after this first ad break. We'll be right back after this. Okay, so Steve, I'm guilty, as I am every year, of overlooking Merrill Kelly and the value he can bring to just kind of solidify a rotation. I don't know what my bias is. I feel like we don't always talk about him on the show, but he has, with that great changeup, has clicked some other things in, and definitely is on the riser list here with the K-BB that's jumped from 10% in April up to 24% in May and June. His last 2 starts, he had shutouts against the Braves and the Marlins with 15 strikeouts over 13 innings. I was trying to just kind of, go month by month and look at it. It does look like he is ramped the cutter usage up from 15% in April to June, where it's 25%. And that was almost a non-existent offering to right-handed hitters in April. And in June, he's throwing it a lot more to right-handed hitters, which is interesting because I think, am I right in remembering that Nick loves the cutter? Is it going in to like lefties? but he's throwing it to, same-handed hitters. So yeah, it's just interesting, but it does look like it tunnels really nicely with his sinker, which isn't particularly great. I mean, his changeup is the pitch that gets a ton of whiffs and has gotten more whiffs over this season. But yeah, it definitely looks like the cutter has been useful because it has just 100 batting average against. So yeah, Merrill Kelly, certainly not like ace tier, but he has looked like an extreme contributor as like kind of a SP3, SP2 even with what he's been able to do so far this year. So yeah, thoughts on Merrill Kelly, a guy we do not talk about too often.
Yeah, definitely guilty of that. And it's nice because, it seems like it's another case of here's a guy that doesn't have a good fastball. And what do you know? Over May and June, the cutter and the changeup have been used more than the four-seam fastball for Merrill Kelly. It is interesting that it's not being used as sort of a strictly offhanded weapon, but it kind of varies, right? Like he threw in May the cutter more to lefties. In June,
That's right.
it's been like 50-50, right? I know it's a small sample and just the 2 June starts, and only 13 cutters thrown. But it seems like it's a versatile weapon for him, and it's working, right? It has a 169 batting average against, 213 slug, 213 woba. Oh, sorry, that's the changeup. That's absolutely ridiculous with the 36% whiff percentage. But the cutter has a 100 batting average against. The XBA and the hard hit numbers are a little bit worse, and I would expect maybe some regression there. But hey, at least for now, maybe it's something that the hitters aren't expecting. It's an offering that may not be in their scouting report, but yeah, and I think it's just sort of like an ode to Merrill Kelly over the last few years since he came back from Korea, right? It's been since 2019, right? And he's just been basically a solid pitcher ever since then. Yeah, there's been some years where the ERA was inflated, like last year with the 4.03. I know there was some injury there too, and 2021 was a bit of a disappointment after a really good COVID year, and sort of that breakout, or good season when he came back in 2019. I know that was a higher ERA year, and maybe disappointed a bit, but that was also the rabbit ball too in his first year back. But basically, since then, he's been like a mid threes ERA pitcher with a 22% strikeout rate and like a 8 to 10% walk rate. Like just the definition of like a fantasy 3-4 that you kind of need there to just eat these innings and be a solid contributor. So yeah, definitely not enough love from Wins Above Fantasy for Merrill Kelly over the last few years.
Yeah, that innings eater archetype is one that isn't always on our radar.
And an innings eater that's going to give you some more strikeouts than
right.
What I don't know, Tyler Anderson did over
Miles
the last few years,
Michaelis,
right?
yeah.
Miles Michaelis, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and right now, I mean, on the season line now at 24.4% K percentage, which would be the second highest of his kind of 7-season run here. So, yeah, still age 36. I mean, it begs the question if this is possibly like a sell high moment, because I know,
maybe,
like you're saying, Steve, some of this stuff, it does look like there's regression on the way. So, yeah, that's Merrill Kelly, but
and there are peaks and valleys to Kelly's seasons from time to time. All right, I want to throw one guy off rundown for you that I wanted to bring up. A guy that pitched today, did not pitch well, but I still think is worth talking about. Do you have any idea who I'm going to bring up?
Not without having the list in front of me. Oh, is it Ben Brown?
It is Ben Brown. Ben
Brown. I've come close a time or two because of what I've said, that like it's just not that exciting of like, I guess you could call it June. Like I've been looking for pitchers to add since Logan Henderson got sent down and everything. and Ben Brown is just like, he teases us with the swing and miss stuff. It's just, it seems like every time you get really excited, then there's a couple, times where he gets knocked around for like, oh, there's a 6-run outing or an 8-run outing. And it's like, oh man, I don't know if I could take kind of a weak wrecker. But then the starts around it are always like he's either really good or really bad, which is a tempting thing when the strikeouts are always there. But I like the extension, Steve, and I mean, he's a name that we've had on our radar and talked about, despite him being, pretty much like a rookie. I guess he's probably graduated, right? But yeah, where's your head at with Ben Brown?
Ben Brown is the ultimate test case if you want to buy into blindly the things that we look at when we're trying to evaluate a buy low pitcher, and find someone that may not have the surface results or has pretty ugly surface results that you need to blindly buy into, right? That being said, there are warts, right? Like, the fastball is not good. It is dead zone as dead zone comes. Like, Savant has that movement profile where, you see the movement profile and then the shaded expected area. Like, all of his fastballs are in that expected, movement profile for his slot and his movement. The extension's nice. The velo's good, but there's obviously a fastball problem. There is a secondary pitch, the knuckle curve, that is absolutely elite. He spots that well, gets a ton of swing and miss. It has a 43.6% whiff percentage. By Stuff Plus, it's a 119. So yeah, like the 2 standard deviations above good. And the K minus BB, 27%, 28% strikeout rate, 7.1% walk rate. Love that. 13.6% swing strike rate. Love that. 32% CSW. Love that. 5.37 ERA. Do not love that. But I think I'm leaning more towards at least splitting the difference between that 5.37 ERA and the 3.14 FIP, 3.22 xFIP, and a 3.19 Sierra. And I think Sierra is basically as good as you can get for the indicators. It's up there probably with, if I had to pick one, that would be it. But and that's the best one, or the close to the best one in FIP. So there's red flags, but I think that, if you would say, hey, here's this pitcher with a 20% K minus strikeout rate, that's improving, right? Like from April to May, it went from 14% to 26%. That's something that I want to buy into. A ground ball rate of 42% is not bad either. I think it's more of just, hey, is he going to run a 65% left on base percentage? And maybe there'll be a little bit of regression with the 10.4% home run to fly ball. I know that's not too bad, but maybe he can get to a stretch where that's 5% and the left on base remains a little high. Like, for a guy that strikes out 28% of the guys and only walks 7% to, basically not strand 35% of the guys that are on base, that tells me that it's a little unlucky. So I'm believing in Ben Brown.
It's a good argument. I mean, he's only had 20 starts at the major league level. I think it kind of feels like the type of pitcher that we'd be frustrated to be in on this year, and then you get burned and he breaks out next year when he like adds a third reliable pitch or something. Like, I think that's the one thing that scares me. Is
that's
just
another
like,
big red flag. Yeah,
are people just sitting? Yeah,
dude.
are
If you
people
look
just
at his
sitting on the fastball, dude?
If you have his font page up or his page up, do you see his changeup spray chart? Or like heat map of where it's thrown?
My gosh.
It just looks like a shotgun blast.
Tie-dye shirt. Yeah, this is all over the place. He needs a third pitch, because as good as a knuckle curve can be with like swing and miss
some sort
stuff.
of hard, like fastball sinker, like it's prime for that. Like, just another hard pitch that he could command that keeps people off that fastball a little bit, because then maybe the dead zone fastball would play up a little bit too, right? Like,
Mhm.
I know it's easy. Like, it's so much easier said than done. Like, all these podcasts say, "Hey, add a cutter, add a sinker." Like, that's so hard to do. Like, it's hard enough to throw one pitch well enough that it could perform in the major leagues. So, yeah, let's just pick up another one. And I know guys do it all the time, so maybe we're a bit spoiled in the day and age of pitch design, but he just seems absolutely primed for like another
Oh,
hard
yeah.
pitch, because that like that knuckle curve is probably one of the best like breaking pitches in the game, if not the best this year. Like, what's his run value on that this year?
Well, it gets
I'm
hit a little
curious.
bit, so that might be suppressed, but in terms of swing and
Yeah,
miss
it does.
stuff,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, like, it's still at a -1 this year, which is crazy,
Yeah.
because
That goes to
it's a
show
good
with
whip
like
pitch.
why the results aren't the best to look at, why we have
Yeah,
PLV.
but I'm
What's
with
the
you that
PLV on it? That's the better question.
yeah, but I am with you that Ben Brown feels like kind of a, a little bit of the designed in a lab pitcher. Like, yeah, the velo could be a little bit harder, the extension could be a little bit more. He could have another pitch or two, but like he's 25 years old, 6'6", throws gas, has good extension, and has an amazing curve. Like if he can get IVB on the fastball, or if he can add a third pitch to keep people off balance and not just have them sit. I mean, yeah, the comparison pictures, I love what's down here on like the Logan Gilbert, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
that his comps are more SP3, SP2 ace in terms of like what he could become. So yeah, I and you bring up a great point that the K minus BB, which is what this show is, 27 strikeout percentage. You expect the walk rate to be like 10 plus, and it's not. So I think he is one that throughout July, it's only going to take 2 good starts in a row for me to be completely flip what I'm saying right now and be like, oh, Tyler Glass now did it with 2 pitches. So yeah, I like that. That's a good shout for sure. Um, Getting to kind of the regular rostered guys, but we got to talk about Robbie Ray. He's another one like Merrill Kelly who jumped on the K minus BB from 10 to 24% from April to where we are. And yeah, this is the Nick Pollock special. I know Robbie Ray was like his one,
Mm-hmm.
don't leave your drafts without this guy. And then the results didn't look good. Nick talked about how he was leaning in too much to the fastball usage, and that's dropped from I think what Nick had called out was like in his first like 5 or 6 starts, it was like 63% on the fastball, and then it hadn't been anything higher than like 50% for 7 starts after that. Now the weird part is his start in June, which had good results. We got to check in on what he's doing tonight. He went right back to the fastball, so it's kind of like, Robbie Ray, you forget because he had the injuries, but he was one of the original most frustrating pitchers in
Mm-hmm.
fantasy because he
Mm-hmm.
would just
He was Ben Brown
build
before
you up.
Ben Brown. Yeah.
Yes, he would build you up to let you down, and then throw a no hitter after you benched him and all that stuff. So, yeah, the past month though, I mean, I think it was, National League Pitcher of the Month in May. And over his past month, he's had 41 strikeouts in 33 innings, a 191 ERA, and a .91 WHIP. I'm cheering for this one, Steve. I actually put a little outright on him for NL Cy Young, just for the founding father, hyping him up so much. And I thought I had a little steam, but he's going tonight, and he wasn't off to a good start in Coors. I got to check in what he's doing right now. I don't know if you've got it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's 6-3 Rocky. Yeah, I mean, not the greatest, not the worst.
Not
4
terrible.
innings,
He
6 hits, 2
Yeah,
earned, 5 Ks, 2 walks,
he
4
settled
runs.
down a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, what do you think on Robbie Ray now? Nick's got him at number 11 on the list, and are we kind of ready to call Robbie Ray an ace officially here?
I don't know. Maybe. I just think that there's a lot of volatility to Robbie Ray seasons. We've seen it to an extent so far with this April and May. Like, I think Robbie Ray is like a tinkerer. Like, he's constantly, if you look at his pitch mix by season, like, there's just massive up and downs that, it's particularly with the fastball, with the slider, with the sinker. He doesn't throw it. He does throw it. It goes away.
Yep.
He brings back the knuckle curve. Like there's a lot of different changes in this, and I think that's good. It shows that he's adapting, but I also think that there's points where Robbie Ray does become frustrating. Maybe this is I'm speaking from experience, and it's not necessarily the hardest analysis, but there's a lot of like Blake Snell and Dylan
Sure.
Cease to this, right? Like I think that's the profile of someone that walks 10 to 13% of the guys every year. And
Yeah.
he does really well in the seasons that he strikes out, 32% of the guys, but then there's some seasons where it's, you know, like 2020 when he had a 27% strikeout rate and had a 6.26 ERA. I know that was the shortened COVID year and probably would have gotten a lot better, but there was also 2022 in Seattle where he had a 3.70 ERA after that Cy Young year, right? And that came with like his best walk rate or second best walk rate of his career, right? I know this is weird to say about a guy that's won a Cy Young, but it's very Blake Snell to me. And there are stretches when Blake Snell is the best pitcher in the league as recently as last year, right? But I just think that
For an
there are
ace
chances
tag.
that
Yeah.
there are chances that he could have a month with a 5 ERA.
Yeah.
More so than others, which is why like I don't disagree with Nick's rankings. I think it's deserving, but I don't know if I would ever put him like higher than like 8 on the list. I just don't have that trust that I do for those other guys with Ray.
Yeah, honestly, it's a little like I guess I'm confused at how the four seam gets so much success as well, because it is a good pitch for him, even if he was kind of like leaning on it too much. But like he doesn't have great velo extension. I guess he just locates it high, and I guess the changeup is really what is worth noting, that he brought that back this year, and the whiff rate on it has been great. From April it was 38%, in May it was 49%, in June 71. So when you pair that at the same location generally as the fastball, I think that's a working combo for him. And then I mean the other stuff, I mean he's always been pretty nasty, but like this year the slider whiff rate overall is down compared to last year. So I think I'm with you that he's going to have big outings, but it might be kind of an up and down year to where I guess now season line he's at a 2.55 ERA, a 1.12 whip. Like that's got to regress a little bit, and I think we're already starting to see that. So and to be fair, Nick's not ordaining him the ace of all aces. He's kind of said don't expect this type of month all year. So it's just interesting because Ray is, again, some of these guys we talk about going into the season, we don't hit on them throughout the year. So Robbie Ray, definitely fantastic rebound after the slow start in April. Another one that is, I put on the rundown here, Steve, vintage fantasy baseball example, and it's Kevin Gausman, who, like, just when everyone is like, we're ready to move on from this, right? He turns around and is back with the splitter, and it feels like a little bit Gausman is reborn, and we all look silly because we weren't even like looking twice at him in draft rooms because we were chasing upside elsewhere. His K minus BB jumped from 13% in April up to 23% in May and June. And I think that a lot of that just comes down to the splitter. I mean, we know that the splitter is the ultimate field pitch. And not only has his whiff rate gone up from 27 to 40% during from April to June, but his usage followed that to where it's gone up from 32% up to 42% as well. So he's throwing a pitch that is kind of his signature pitch, and that pitch is working well. So he had 2 9-strikeout shutouts in May, and it seems like Gausman is going to be good. Maybe not great, but good throughout the season, unless that pitch totally vanishes on him. So Thoughts on Gausman, who is kind of having a very Kevin Gausman year all of a sudden with a 3.87 ERA and a 103 WHIP.
Yeah, it's definitely not the peak Gausman from post Baltimore through the first few years of um, Toronto. I don't think that will ever really be back, but I think there potentially could be a usable fantasy pitcher again. Maybe one that was like, uh, somewhere in between, San Francisco Gausman and late career Baltimore Gausman. The velocity is up a little bit again too. That always helps the a guy that's fastball splitter. I think when he was at the peak of his powers, he was closer to 95, 96, even, could touch upper 90s, right? He's now sitting 94.5, which is a half tick up from last year, which doesn't sound like much, but hey, when it's that mix, it's that much more important. And then, yeah, the fact that the splitter movement has just ticked up, or splitter usage has just ticked up, that just shows that he's more comfortable with it. Maybe the fastball is playing up. He can then use the splitter more off of that. Like, right, like I think him throwing more splitter than fastball was a common thing over the years. Like in 2023, that happened a good amount. Same with 2022. This year, last year, that did not happen really at all, other than the beginning of the season when I think he was like looking pretty good. So the fact that he's using it more and almost as a primary pitch is a good sign. That being said, the last start he did, it was the lowest usage since like the beginning of May. So I don't know, just something to monitor there. What was his last game there too? I don't think it was great, right? It was okay. 6 innings, 3 earned runs. 5 Ks, 3 walks. So not the best, but he was on a nice little run there for a while, where it looked like Pete Gausman with 7 innings, 0 runs, 9 strikeouts, 8 innings, 0 runs, 1 run, 0 walks, 6 Ks. He had a 10 strikeout game back in the beginning of April or start of April too. So there's definitely more signs and more encouraging things with Gausman this year than there had been at all last year. I was a believer in him a bit last year. I thought he could, but I thought he battled injury. I think he had an injury in spring training in 2023 and then faded a bit. So I bought the bounce back, and maybe it was just a year early. And it looks like he could be at least like a fantasy 3, which is pretty good.
It is. Yeah. I think, Gausman being 34 years old is actually a touch younger than I had him in my mind.
He's felt like he's been around forever, right?
Yeah, and he does have probably 7 or 8 seasons where he's gone like 180 innings or more.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some mileage there, but it's encouraging at his age to see not only the splitter, but like you said, the velocity tick back up. So we would have seen stranger things in baseball than if Gausman put together like kind of a whatever you want to call it, like a swan song 180 strikeout type of season. He's not far off on the K percent, and it's been a really good run, even though, like you said, like the last game was a little bit ho-hum, but yeah.
And guys with that kind of mileage, while there is the downside to it, right? But he'll know how to pitch his way through not having a feel for a splitter for a game, right?
Right.
He'll be able to mix and match as that savvy veteran versus the guy that's faced this lineup 4 or 5 times in the last 5 years, right? Or whatever, the last 2 years, and just knows how to do it as a savvy veteran, right? There's pitchability with Kevin Gausman. I think sometimes we overlook with those guys that have been around forever, right? It's why, and I'm not saying that he's going to do this, but it's why guys like Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer can have amazing seasons at age 40 with diminished stuff. Gausman was never really at those guys' skill level, so it's going to be a diminished return on that, but there's still some aspect to that Gausman they
Spot
have
on.
as a
Yeah.
wily veteran.
Same with you mentioning those guys made me think of Wainwright. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
like they've
Yep.
got their
Yeah.
main pitch and like a
Yeah.
curve or the splitter.
Charlie Morton has made a
Yes,
career out of this the last 5-6 years, right?
totally. Wily veteran, gonna get the job done. And like for the most part, I know the splitter has some volatility, but he's also over the years had pretty good control given that. So you can count on single digit walk rate, all that stuff. So yeah, Gausman just interesting in a hat tip there. 45 on the list for Nick Pollock. So let's do a little quick would you rather there between Merrill Kelly and Kevin Gausman.
Ooh, that's a good one. That is a good. Is this your callback?
No, on
No.
the
Okay.
fader
Okay.
is
Okay.
when I
Okay.
got
Jump
one
the gun. Jump
that's
the gun.
highly
Jump the gun.
rostered. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's a tough one. Gausman or Kelly?
Am I going to do it on the show and say Gausman and continue to fade Kelly so he can prove us wrong
I'm
again?
going to go Kelly. I think there's a higher floor there. I'm going to go Kelly.
Okay. Yeah, I think there is a higher floor. Okay, so that is the list of the risers. Again, we had Bryce Elder, Mathew Boyd, Grant Holmes, Merrill Kelly. We threw in Ben Brown as well, Robbie Ray, and Kevin Gausman. We will get to the fallers, and we got 4 or 5 names we can kind of breeze through a little bit on the ones dropping, but we're going to take our second ad break, and we'll be right back after this. Okay, so Steve, these ones are actually, to start, pretty interesting because I think there's some availability here and people kind of jumping ship. So it's a buying opportunity so long as we believe we should be buying these guys. And Shane Baz is who we're leading off with, 44% rostered in Yahoo. Yet he is 52 on the list for Nick Pollock. So that's almost like there should be a metric for that.
There's a disconnect there, yeah.
You're at rostership per list ranking. So Boz is under rostered there, but his K minus BB, of course, he had a really good April where there were, I think, a couple double digit strikeout games. We were ready to say, but it did look a little different. We were like, oh, it wasn't what we expected to see, but this is how good Shane Baz is. And the K minus B dropped all the way down to 6% in May, June. The walks went up, the swing and miss went down, and I can tell you he's available in my home league, Steve. So I'm curious your take on Baz. It's a tempting name. I mean, I feel like we know when he's on, he can be sensational, but he's looked a little lost lately, kind of moving away from some of his breaking stuff that has had us all raving for years. So what do we make of Shane Baz?
I would not let Shane Baz be sitting on my wire. Maybe I'm a sucker. I've talked about him for years. The Alex Chamberlain moment when he was on our podcast still sticks out in my mind. The draft day, Shane Baz, no matter what type of mindset, right? The fact that he came back from injury last year and had really good results with diminished stuff and slowly built up to improved as the year went on and seemed like he was gaining stuff made me very, very interested in him this year. And I do have quite a bit of shares. That being said, there definitely is a missing piece to his game, and that's basically finding a secondary. I know the knuckle curve grades out well, but he just needs that horizontal pitch or change up to be able to tie his arsenal all together and mix in with that really good fastball velocity that he has. He's sitting 96.7 this year, was 95.7 last year. So if you would have told me that, it's yes, this is happening. His stuff is fully back. But it's another one. All the pieces are there. It just seems like they need to be organized in the right way. When you dump the puzzle on the table and you're trying to sort where the edges are and put all the colors in the right spot. So I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of my blind faith and just the fact that I've liked this pitcher and wanted him to do well all year, but he's just not generating the chase or whiff that He should with his stuff. It's super surprising that this is happening on the Rays. Like if this guy was on anyone else, like trade him with the Rays, they'll figure it out. They'll unlock it. But it's
Right,
like
right,
even the
exactly.
Rays have a bit of trouble too, right? But the ground ball is elite. Like all the makings is there for him to be this amazing starting pitcher, and I think it's just a matter of like figuring out the slider and like getting more comfortable with that. Like if you look at the slider pitch plot on Pfaadt, like it's just a blob in the middle of the plate. That's not where you want the slider. Same with the changeup. Like the four
Mhm.
seam looks great at the top of zone. Knuckle curve looks great in the bottom, bottom away quadrant from righties, right? But he just needs something else for lefties, and then for to get comfortable as another as a true whiff pitch, right? Like for as good as stuff as he has, like the best whiff that he has is on the changeup, and he only throws that 13% of the time, and really only to lefties, right? So he really struggles to get swing and miss versus righties. I don't know. Maybe it's a cutter, a sinker, something that could tie the arsenal and the fastball and knuckle curve together. But it just seems like it's a tweak away with Boz, and I'm maybe blindly, but I'm going to bat for him, and would not want him to sit in my wire. Like if if we were just talking here, if it was just you and me, and you're like, yeah, I've been struggling for this to find a pitcher like in my home league, like, and you tell me
Mhm.
Boz is on your wire, I'm like, dude, just add him, and like maybe not start him for the hard matchups right now, but I think it'll pay off in the long run.
Yeah, the knuckle curve, he's throwing it as hard as he's ever thrown it, and the spin rate is up versus last year. So I don't know if it's a situation where he's still getting used to some of those changes, because with that, like last year, it had a 169 batting average against. This year, it's at a 223, and the whiff rates dropped from 31% to 22%. So I think he needs that to be, like you said, a swing and miss pitch for
Mhm.
righties, that it's not right now. But I do think that obviously there's so much upside here. This seems like one of the investment ones, certainly for like a head-to-head league, that like here we are in June, there might be 10 max pitchers that you have a chance to add that could be true difference makers for like a playoff push. And Boz is one of them. So I think you're right, Steve. I think when as soon as, is like a Taj Bradley gets knocked around again, it'll be like, yeah, it's time to just.
Oh, I'd rather have Boz than Bradley, man.
Yeah, I mean, I picked up Bradley, and he was just kind of wouldn't let me drop him because he had like 5, usable starts in a row, but the last one wasn't good. So yeah, I think you might be right. That might be my move. So
We could
if you're
pause if
listening,
you wanna
TJ,
do it
keep
right
your
now.
paws
Yeah.
off. Yeah. Okay. So that's Boz. It's moving to we can do this one quick because Max Meyer is on the IL, but just 24% rostered. It's just nuts. I think the last time we talked about him on the podcast, we were gushing about the 14 strikeout
Mhm.
game. We were talking about how Max Meyer is, might be a top 70 overall pick next year. Really calling him like the breakout pitcher of the year. And granted, he's on the IL with this hip impingement. He should be back at the end of the month. So it's kind of a sleepy ad right now. I haven't seen anything that like the hip was bothering him, but he got hit real hard 5 of his last 7 starts before going on the IL. And yeah, the K minus BB stuff dropped from an elite 25% in April down to 8% in May and June. And just worth kind of reassessing Max Meyer because it's a long season and he's going to be coming back kind of around the halfway point. I know Nick's got him like in the 90s, and he's like, until he shows us what we saw in spring training, I'm out. But are you watching this one as closely as Boz? Because this is another one of those that has the potential to be a true difference maker.
He is on my IL slot where in leagues that I have him and have an IL slot available.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's been kind of brushed off, but there is a pretty interesting quote, at least to me, after he went on the IL. the Marlins manager, Clayton McCullough, said he's been feeling it for the last 2 starts. Nothing that felt like really limiting or hindering him. I think last night was the first time he felt like in the outing that it was starting to really inhibit his ability to finish and make pitches, which you're looking back on kind of see that led to a lot of pitches staying arm side, maybe just not the finish there. I know that they're saying, it was nothing really limiting him or hindering him. Like what? Like he's feeling a hip injury. Of course, that's going to affect the results. And look at what's happened over the last few starts. I maybe it's confirmation bias, but I don't know. To me, if there's a hip injury that he's been feeling the last few starts, and before he was feeling it, he was striking out 14 guys. Like, yeah, maybe it was the hip,
Right.
or at least I'm waiting to find out if that's the case.
Yeah, we give people credit for less. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, he had that blister a month and a half ago. You know what I mean?
I know
it's like
that
a hip.
I know that you want to keep injuries close to the chest, and there's people don't want to make excuses for anyone, and I know Meyer isn't going to make this excuse and say this is why that happened. Like that's just not how these guys are. But I think it's a pretty clear timeline and story explanation. Like guy was going really good, hurt his hip, bad results, IL, come back. Let's see if he's closer to what he was in April and May.
Yeah. Yep. Worth watching. And if the IL slot is there, 24%, definitely. I'll do the spoiler alert to the recall, Steve. Okay. Brandon Pfaadt is like 66% rostered at this point, and he is one that, compared to some of those early names, I'm just not sure, man. Like he just gets punished by lefties. The past month, he's got a 9.89 ERA. I mean, part of that was it was like the Pablo Lopez start of years past, or insert. I mean, we've all seen those, but he didn't record a single out and gave up 8 earned runs. And so, like, what do we make of Pfaadt? Like, why are people holding on? I've kind of lost interest. He was a big faller on the K-BB. I know that he was looking like he had a solution for lefties like early on in the season. But now he's sitting at a 5.50 ERA and a 1.42 WHIP. I just struggle to see what's to get like super excited about with Pfaadt, but I'm curious if you've got a take there.
Yeah, I rostered Pfaadt for the first 2 months of the season. Was relatively excited about him. Maybe it was more based on results, and I wasn't diving into it because there wasn't really much to dive into. At least, the first few starts of the season, like they looked pretty good. Like he seemed like he had a curveball to handle lefties, and the results were good. And then it kind of all fell apart. I felt the pain. Friend of the program, Ryan Bloomfield, a few weeks ago on the Luzardo, Pfaadt, and Warren day, when they all got lit up, and Luzardo gave up 12 runs, Pfaadt didn't record an out, and Warren got lit by the Dodgers. Ryan Bloomfield tweeted, "There's got to be a Luzardo, Pfaadt, Warren team out there," and it was me. I had those 3 guys going that day on May 31st, just a few weeks ago. And Ryan promptly responded to my screenshot of that with just, my God. So, yeah. And then I'm a glutton for punishment. So I dropped Pfaadt after that, picked him up the next game, and he got, gave up 8 runs, I think, in like 2 innings again. So I did not have him for a start on Monday, which was better, but still not great. I think he had like 9 hits in 5 innings, got a win, but still hasn't looked great. And it's frustrating because there also is a guy in there that has, game log ability, like you like to see, where he has 10 strikeout games, 12 strikeout games, and looks like, when he has feel for the sweeper, looks like he's on the precipice of becoming a really fantasy relevant player, and then has games and stretches like this that leave you frustrated. And maybe there's more bad than good, at least for now, until he figures out that lefty problem and gets more comfortable, even with like what should be his best pitch this year on the sweeper. Like there's been points like I think 2 games ago he like didn't even really throw it, which is crazy because it's like one of those pitches that are like, you know, name the one single best pitch in baseball, right? And Pfaadt sweeper is up there, but it just hasn't been the case this year.
Yeah, yep, that's fair. And there was stuff last year that was exciting, and the sweepers taking a step backwards this year. And so yeah, it's a fair point. But I just think at this point in the season, looking at rostership like 66% or whatever it is compared to some of these guys, like I'd rather have Grant Holmes, right?
Yes, I would rather have Holmes than
maybe Bryce Elder is a trickier.
Yeah, I think that would be like matchup dependent. So maybe
that's
a lawyer answer there, but
the last two I just kind of called out is Chris Bassitt and Mathew Liberatore, who we've talked about earlier this season. They've come back down to earth, but it's still usable, I would say, like the 22% K minus BB for Bassitt, 21 for Liberatore. That's dropped to 13% and 14% respectively. So I mean, you know, there's ways you can kind of slice and dice these guys, but Bassitt is kind of looking like you would have expected Bassitt before he was like setting the world on fire for those 4 or 5 starts, and we got super excited. And then Liberatore, it's tough to say. I mean, his last like 3 starts, he's gotten hit around a little bit, and I think that's kind of what we were saying, that he's traded off some of that swing and miss for command and location and kind of changing how he looks as a pitcher. And without that foundation of strikeouts, there's not a ton that makes him like fantasy viable when he is kind of burning you on ratios. So just curious on Bassitt, Liberatore, if there's anybody else you want to bring up at the end here.
No, I don't think so. I think that these are just sort of the nature of back end fantasy Tobies, right? Like,
sure,
for the most part, you're going to want these guys on your roster are going to start the most games, except for like the toughest of tough matchups versus Dodgers versus the Yankees in cores, things like that. And I think that that's sort of what Liberatore's becoming. Like, I think Chris Bassitt's like a good comp for him for like long term, which is pretty good. Like, and there's seasons that there's more good than bad, or the peaks are higher than the valleys, and the valleys are lower, leading to like some really good fantasy relevant years. But for the most part, I think these guys sort of fluctuate, and you kind of see that month to month K minus BB numbers, with, you know, lowerish stuff, decent command, innings eaters that I think are useful in fantasy. Like I would rather have Liberatore and Bassitt than Pfaadt for sure.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. Yeah. No,
even though the only one that can give you really a double-digit strikeout game is probably Pfaadt. Like the upside is higher, but you're gonna want
our boy Bassitt early in the year.
Yeah,
but I don't know that you could ever really count on that. Yeah, he was on a heater there for a second. What was it? Yeah, I guess he had the 110 strikeout game, but he had a 9 strikeout game. So yeah, that's all cooled off. So good list. I think chasing upside in this range, and that's where Boz and Meyer feel like they stand out quite a bit. I mean, Pfaadt, I would have to see kind of a prolonged run, because we haven't seen it yet this season where we have with Boz and Meyer. So it just feels like it's kind of a little bit closer of a tweak for them, especially Meyer with the injury, and Boz he has a ceiling that even Pfaadt hasn't shown. So okay, well, that rounds us out. Thank you guys for joining us as always. You guys can hit us up with any topics you want to talk about. You guys can join the live stream on Wednesday nights. We do them Tuesdays as well, I think. Throughout the season,
flexible summer for us.
Flex summer. But we'll be weekly from for the rest of the way in. So appreciate having you guys here as always, talking K minus BB risers and fallers. Episode 181. Thanks for talking baseball with us.
Thanks, guys. Later.